First Contact Captain Marcus Vance gripped the armrests of his command chair as the Terran Defiant shuddered under another barrage from the Zephyrian fleet. The bridge lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the faces of his crew. Through the view screen, he watched enemy vessels dance through space with impossible grace, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight into deadly rainbow beams. "Hull breach on Deck 7, shouted Lieutenant Torres from her station. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely." Marcus had been fighting this war for 3 years, ever since the Zephyrians had emerged from the Veil Nebula, claiming humanity had trespassed on sacred territory. What had started as a territorial dispute had escalated into a full-scale conflict that threatened to consume both civilizations. Human colonies burned while Zephyrian worlds fell to Earth's relentless advance. "Sir, we're receiving an unusual transmission," reported Communications Officer Blake. "It's different, not military frequency." On screen. The view screen shimmered, replacing the battle scene with the image of a being that took Marcus's breath away. She stood regally in what appeared to be a throne room of living crystal, her skin bearing an opalescent sheen that shifted between silver and gold. Her features were hauntingly beautiful, almost human but enhanced. Larger eyes that held depths of starlight, elegant bone structure that spoke of nobility, and flowing hair that seemed to move with its own ethereal wind. "I am Queen Zixandra, of the Zephyrian Sovereign Collective," she said, her voice carrying musical undertones that resonated through the bridge speakers. "I address Captain Marcus Vance of the vessel Terran Defiance." Marcus stood slowly, his tactical mind racing. How did she know his name? His ship's designation? "I'm listening, Your Majesty. Our peoples bleed while we dance this deadly ballet. Among the stars," she continued, her expression grave yet somehow hopeful. "I have watched you, Captain Vance. Your tactical brilliance, your compassion for your crew, your refusal to target civilian vessels even when victory seemed within grasp. You are not like other human commanders. What do you want?" Marcus asked, though something in her gaze told him he might not be prepared for the answer. Queen Zixandra stepped closer to whatever device was transmitting her image, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "I offer an end to this war, Captain. Complete cessation of hostilities, the return of captured territories, the healing of wounds between our species." The bridge fell silent except for the distant sound of damage control teams working frantically. Marcus felt his crew's eyes on him, waiting. "And the cost?" Her smile was sad and beautiful and terrifying all at once. "You must become my mate, Captain Vance. A union between our species, sealed in the ancient ways of my people. You would rule beside me as king consort, and our bond would guarantee peace for generations." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Behind him, he heard someone's sharp intake of breath, probably Torres. The tactical display showed 17 human ships remaining against 43 Zephyrian vessels. They were losing, and badly. "You're asking me to abandon my species," he said quietly. "No," Zixandra replied, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm asking you to bridge them, to become something new. Our mating rituals are not merely ceremonial, Captain. They create a psychic bond that would make betrayal impossible. You would carry my thoughts, and I yours. Trust absolute." Marcus stared at her image, this alien queen who somehow knew him better than he knew himself. Through the deck plating, he could feel the ship's engines straining, fighting a battle they couldn't win. How many more would die if this continued? "I need time to consider," he managed. "Time is a luxury neither of us possess," she said softly. "My war council grows impatient, and your fleet weakens with each passing moment. I can hold them back for one solar cycle, 24 of your hours. Then the final assault begins, and this offer dies with your ships." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at the resumed battle display, the weight of 2 civilizations resting on his shoulders. The burden of choice. Marcus paced his ready room like a caged predator, the weight of Queen Zixandra's proposition crushing down on him with each step. The battle still raged outside his viewport, but both fleets had pulled back to defensive positions, an unofficial ceasefire while he wrestled with an impossible decision. "Captain, you can't seriously be considering this," Commander Janet Reeves said from across his desk. His first officer had known him for 8 years, served with him through the Titan rebellions and the Centauri incident. Her concern was written across every line of her weathered face. 18,000 souls on this fleet alone, Janet, Marcus replied, gesturing toward the viewport where human ships limped through space-trailing atmosphere and debris. Millions more in the colonies. How many lives is my freedom worth? It's not about freedom, sir. It's about what happens after. You'd be giving them a hostage, leverage over all of humanity. Dr. Felix Brightwater looked up from his tablet, the xenobiologist's expression thoughtful. Marcus had called him in to analyze every detail of Zix Andra's transmission. Actually, Commander, I don't think that's her intention. The psychic bonding she mentioned, it's consistent with what we know of Zephyrian neural architecture. They're empathic by nature, incapable of the kind of deception we humans excel at. So she's telling the truth? Marcus asked, hope and dread warring in his chest. About the bond creating trust? Almost certainly. But Captain Brightwater hesitated, then pressed on. The procedure would fundamentally alter your brain chemistry. You'd still be you, but you'd also be more and different. The changes would be irreversible. Lieutenant Torres stepped forward from her position by the door. Sir, if I may, the crew's been talking. Word's gotten out about the Queen's offer. She paused, clearly struggling with her words. They're behind you, whatever you decide, but they also want you to know. Some of them have families back on Earth. Kids who've never seen their fathers because of this war. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering faces from the personnel files. Stevens in engineering, whose daughter had been born during the siege of Kepler. Station. Morrison from security, whose son had just started walking when they'd deployed. How many children were growing up without parents because of this endless conflict? There's something else, Dr. Brightwater added quietly. I've been analyzing the Zephyrian technology we've captured. Their bioengineering capabilities are centuries ahead of ours. If this alliance holds, the medical advances alone could revolutionize human civilization. Extended lifespans, enhanced healing, possibly even the ability to survive in environments that would kill us now. And if it doesn't hold, Commander Reeves asked pointedly, then I'd be in the perfect position to tear their civilization apart from within, Marcus said grimly. The strategic possibilities weren't lost on him. A human with access to Zephyrian technology and royal authority could tip the balance of power permanently. But was that the man he wanted to become? His comm unit chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Harrison at Fleet Command. Marcus activated the holodisplay, and his superior's grim face materialized above his desk. Vance, I've been briefed on the situation. The Joint Chiefs are divided. Some see this as an opportunity to end the war without losing face. Others think you'd be walking into a trap. What's your assessment, Admiral? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. I've known you since you were a lieutenant, Marcus. You've never made a decision based on personal gain or glory. If you think this is the right path, he shrugged. I trust your judgment. But I want you to understand. If you do this, there's no coming back. You'd cease to be a Terran officer in any meaningful sense. Understood, sir. You have 16 hours remaining. Whatever you decide, you have the full support of Earth Command. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with his senior staff and the most important decision in human history. Through the viewport, he could see Zephyrian ships maintaining their defensive positions, their crystalline hulls pulsing with patient light. Somewhere among them, Queen Zix Andra waited for his answer. Marcus thought about his childhood on Mars, colony, about the dreams he'd had of exploring the stars in peace rather than war. He thought about the faces of his crew, trusting him to lead them home. Most of all, he thought about a beautiful alien queen who claimed she could end all this, suffering with a single word if he said yes. The royal court Marcus had never imagined that accepting an alien queen's proposal would begin with him floating in a transport pod through the most beautiful structure he'd ever seen. The Zephyrian flagship Stellar Harmony was less a warship than a floating city of living crystal, its corridors pulsing with bioluminescent veins that responded to the emotions of those who walked them. Queen Zixandra met him personally at the docking bay, flanked by an honor guard that looked like they'd stepped from humanity's legends of angels. Their armor was crafted from the same living crystal as the ship, flowing and organic, yet clearly providing protection that could withstand starship weaponry. "Captain Vance," she said, and Marcus was struck again by the musical quality of her voice. "You honor us with your presence." "Your Majesty," he replied, offering a respectful bow. Military protocol hadn't prepared him for greeting an alien queen he'd agreed to marry, but improvisation had always been one of his strengths. She smiled, and the corridor's lighting shifted to warmer hues. "Please, call me Zixandra. We are to be equals in this arrangement." As they walked through corridors that seemed to breathe around them, Marcus observed everything with a tactician's eye. The ship's defenses were integrated into its very structure. He could sense weapon systems hidden within decorative elements, shielding generators that doubled as architectural supports. These beings had turned warfare into art. "You analyze my home like a potential battlefield," Zixandra observed, her empathic abilities picking up on his thoughts. "It is refreshing. Most suitors attempt to flatter me with compliments about its beauty. Most suitors probably aren't considering the strategic implications of marrying you," Marcus replied dryly. Her laughter was like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. "Indeed, I confess, Captain, that I chose you not despite your military mind, but because of it. What we attempt requires someone who understands both the cost of war and the complexity of peace." They entered what could only be described as a throne room. Though it defied human architectural concepts, the space seemed to extend infinitely upward, its walls alive with shifting patterns that told stories in light and color. Assembled before the throne were beings Marcus assumed were Zixandra's advisors, some humanoid like the Queen, others so alien he struggled to process their forms. A tall figure with skin like polished obsidian stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the War Council questions the wisdom of trusting our fate to this human." The word carried a subtle emphasis that Marcus recognized as barely concealed disgust. "General Vexitar speaks from concern, not prejudice," Zixandra said diplomatically, though Marcus caught the warning in her tone. "He has led our fleets to many victories." Marcus studied the general, noting the scarring on his crystalline armor, the way he held himself like a weapon barely restrained. A career military officer then, probably frustrated by his queen's diplomatic solution to what he saw as a military problem. "General," Marcus said, stepping forward, "I understand your concerns. In your position, I'd feel the same way. But I've spent 3 years fighting your people, and I can tell you this: neither of us can win this war. We can only bleed each other dry until someone else comes along to pick the bones." Vextar's large eyes, like black pearls, fixed on Marcus with laser intensity. "You speak of things beyond your understanding, human. The Zephyrian Collective has stood for 10,000 of your years. We will not be brought low by a species that has barely learned to walk among the stars." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed. "But how many of your people are you willing to sacrifice to prove that point? How many of your ships will you watch burn before pride becomes more expensive than peace?" The throne room fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's living systems. Marcus could feel the weight of alien stares, could sense he was being evaluated by minds vastly different from his own. Finally, a being that resembled a walking tree made of starlight spoke in harmonics that the ship's translation systems rendered as, "The human speaks with wisdom beyond his years. Perhaps the Queen's choice is not as inexplicable as some would believe." "High Sage Lumith honors you with her approval," Zixandra explained. "She has advised the royal line for 3 centuries. Marcus bowed toward the sage, then looked back at General Vextar. "I'm not here to replace your military leadership, General. I'm here to make sure it's never needed again. But if it is..." He let his voice carry the steel that had earned him command of humanity's most elite fleet. "I hope we'll be fighting on the same side." Something shifted in Vextar's expression, a grudging recognition of a fellow warrior. "Perhaps there is more to you than I assumed, human. We shall see." As the council session continued, Marcus found himself drawn into discussions of trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and cultural exchange programs. The scope of what they were attempting gradually became clear. Not just a ceasefire, but the foundation of an entirely new kind of civilization. And at the center of it all sat Queen Zixandra, her presence a constant reminder that this grand experiment would succeed or fail, based on their ability to trust each other completely. The bonding ceremony was scheduled for the next day. The bonding. The sacred grove existed within the heart of the stellar harmony, an impossible space where Zephyrian biotechnology had created a living ecosystem within their flagship. Trees of crystalline light reached toward an artificial sky that showed the swirling colors of hyperspace, while flowers that sang in harmonious frequencies carpeted the ground beneath Marcus's feet. He wore ceremonial robes that had been crafted, specifically for him, a fusion of human military tradition and Zephyrian artistry. The fabric seemed to shift and flow like liquid starlight, responding to his nervous energy with subtle pulses of bioluminescence. Having second thoughts? Dr. Brightwater asked quietly. The xenobiologist had insisted on attending as both medical observer and friend, his instruments discreetly recording everything for later analysis. Third and fourth thoughts, Marcus admitted, watching as Zephyrian nobles filled the grove. They moved with an ethereal grace that made him feel clumsy by comparison, their forms casting prismatic shadows in the grove's strange light. But not about the decision itself, about whether I'm worthy of what she's offering. Captain, Commander, Reeves said from beside him, having been granted permission to attend as his witness. I've served with you for 8 years. If anyone can bridge the gap between species, it's you. The ceremonial music began, not played by instruments, but sung by the grove itself as its living components harmonized in frequencies that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the soul. Marcus felt his breathing synchronize with the rhythm, his heartbeat aligning with the pulse of the ship around them. Queen Zixandra entered from the far end of the grove, and Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Her ceremonial gown seemed to be woven from captured starlight, flowing around her form like liquid aurora. Her hair had been arranged in intricate patterns that incorporated living crystal formations, each one pulsing with soft inner light. But it was her eyes that held him. Those deep, luminous orbs that seemed to contain entire galaxies, now focused on him with an intensity that made him feel like the most important being in the universe. As she approached, Marcus was struck by the absolute silence of the assembled crowd. Hundreds of beings from across the Zephyrian collective watched without sound, their attention so focused he could feel it like a physical weight. Marcus of Terra, Zixandra said when she reached him, her voice carrying clearly through the grove, without amplification. Do you come to this union freely, understanding the bonds it will create between our minds and souls? I do, he replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. Do you accept the responsibility of serving not just your people, but all people who look to us for guidance? I do. She extended her hand, and Marcus saw the ceremonial crystal resting in her palm, a fragment of living stone that pulsed with its own inner light. Then let us begin the joining of paths. The high sage Lummoth stepped forward, her tree-like form rustling with harmonic frequencies. The ancient texts speak of bonds that transcend flesh, of unions that create new possibilities from the merger of different streams of consciousness. Today we witness such a joining. Marcus felt the crystal as Zixandra pressed it into his palm. It was warm, almost alive, and as his fingers closed around it, he felt something shift in his perception. Colors became more vivid, sounds more complex, and, beneath it all, he began to sense something new, a presence at the edge of his consciousness that felt distinctly other, yet somehow familiar. The crystal is a conduit, Zixandra explained, her own voice now carrying undertones he hadn't noticed before. It will facilitate the neural pathways necessary for our bond while protecting your essential self from being overwhelmed. As the ceremony continued, Marcus felt layers of mental barriers dissolving. Memories that weren't his own began to surface, glimpses of Zephyrian childhood rituals, The weight of royal responsibility, the loneliness of command decisions that affected billions of lives, and beneath it all he sensed Zixandra's emotions, hope warring with fear, determination strengthened by compassion, and something else. Love. Not romantic love, not yet, but the profound affection one feels for someone who shares their deepest burden. "I can feel your thoughts," he whispered, wonder coloring his voice. "And I yours," she replied, tears of joy streaming down her luminous cheeks. "Your strength, your dedication to your people, your willingness to sacrifice everything for peace. I chose well, Marcus of Terra." The ceremonial crystal began to dissolve, its essence flowing into both of them, creating permanent neural pathways that would link their minds forever. Marcus gasped as the full weight of the bond settled into place, not overwhelming but definitely present, like gaining a new sense he hadn't known he was missing. Through their connection, he felt Zixandra's relief, her gratitude, and her fierce determination to make their union work. But he also sensed something else, a shadow at the edge of her thoughts, a concern she was trying to shield from him. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked quietly. Her smile was sad and beautiful. "That the hardest part begins now." The new. Dawn 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, humanity's first joint diplomatic facility with the Zephyrian Collective. Through the reinforced viewports, he watched human and Zephyrian children playing together in the station's central park, their laughter creating a harmony that no composer could have imagined. The neural bond with Zixandra had changed him in ways both subtle and profound. He could sense her presence even when she was sectors away, feel her emotions as clearly as his own. More importantly, he had access to her memories, her knowledge, her understanding of galactic politics that spanned millennia. "The Terran Colonial Assembly has ratified the expanded trade agreements," Commander Reeves reported, approaching with a data pad. She now served as his liaison between human and Zephyrian command structures, a role that had evolved naturally as the alliance deepened. Marcus nodded, his attention still focused on the children below. A human boy was teaching a young Zephyrian girl how to kick a soccer ball, while she showed him how to make flower petals sing by touching them in specific patterns. Such simple interactions, yet they represented the future he and Zixandra were building. "Any word from the Outer Rim territories?" he asked. "General Patterson reports that the joint patrol fleets have encountered no hostile activity for 47 days running," Reeves replied. The Void Stalkers seemed to have retreated deeper into dark space. That was the shadow Zixandra had been hiding during their bonding, the real reason she had needed a military alliance with humanity. The Zephyrian Collective, for all their technological advancement, had been facing a threat they couldn't handle alone. The Void Stalkers were entities from the space between galaxies, drawn by the psychic emanations of advanced civilizations. They consumed life itself, leaving dead worlds in their wake. Separately, neither humanity nor the Zephyrians could stand against them. Together, combining human adaptability and aggression with Zephyrian technology and empathic abilities, they had driven the entities back, at least temporarily. "Marcus?" Zixandra's mental voice touched his consciousness, warm and familiar, as a lover's caress. "I'm here," he responded through their bond. "The council session is beginning. Your presence is requested." Marcus smiled, still amazed by the casual intimacy of direct mind-to-mind communication. "On my way." The council chamber was a marvel of hybrid architecture, human engineering practicality merged with Zephyrian organic aesthetics. Representatives from both species sat around a table that seemed grown rather than built, its surface displaying holographic data streams in formats both races could interpret. "The question before us," High Sage Lummoth was saying, "is whether we should share our defensive success with the other galactic powers. The Centauri Republic has requested military assistance against Void Stalker incursions in their territory." General Vextar, who had become one of Marcus's strongest supporters, gestured toward the tactical displays. "Our combined fleets number fewer than 800 vessels. The stalkers have probe forces operating in 17 different sectors. We cannot be everywhere at once, but we can teach others to fight them, Marcus interjected, standing to address the assembly. The defensive matrix we've developed, the combination of human tactical doctrine with Zephyrian empathic coordination, it works because our species complement each other. We could train other alliances to achieve similar integration. Admiral Thompson, representing Earth's military interests, frowned. That would mean sharing classified technology and tactics. The security implications are irrelevant if we're all dead, Marcus finished bluntly. Through his bond with Zixandra, he could feel her approval of his directness. The Void Stalkers aren't interested in territorial conquest or resource extraction. They want to devour everything that thinks and feels. Political boundaries mean nothing to them. The human speaks wisdom, said Ambassador Thexra of the Draconian Empire, her reptilian features thoughtful. My people have lost 3 colony worlds to these entities. We would welcome instruction in your defensive methods. The debate continued for hours, but Marcus could sense the tide turning through his awareness of the room's emotional undercurrents. AI skill his bond with Zixandra had enhanced. Fear was giving way to hope, isolation to cooperation. Finally, Queen Zixandra stood, her presence commanding immediate silence. We have learned that strength comes not from standing alone, but from the bonds we forge with others. The union between our species has made us more than the sum of our parts. Perhaps it is time to extend that lesson to the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. Later, as Marcus and Zixandra walked through the station's gardens, she took his hand, gesture that had become natural over the months of their partnership. Do you ever regret your choice? She asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. He was no longer entirely human, just as she was no longer entirely Zephyrian. Their bond had changed them both, created something new that existed in the space between species. But as he watched human and Zephyrian families sharing evening meals in the gardens, as he felt the contentment of billions of beings who could sleep peacefully because of their alliance, he knew his answer. Never, he said firmly. This is what I was meant to do, what we were meant to do. Zixandra smiled, and through their bond he felt her complete agreement. Together they had ended a war and begun something far greater. A new chapter in galactic history where cooperation triumphed over conflict, where love could literally bridge the space between species. The future stretched before them, vast, and full of possibilities, and they would face it together. End of story.